Goodness me, the internet practically stalled yesterday with a Google Cloud identity and access management outage. But it was hardly mentioned in the news this morning against this dreadful backdrop of news from India and Iran. But here in Oxford, the sun is shining. We're arguing about our traffic schemes and our mushrooms, and it feels like Hobbiton. Welcome to the Internet Seriously, a humorous look at tech news and politics. I am Lucian Taylor in sunny little quiet Oxford.
And I'm Emily Taylor, also in Oxford.
I'm Mark Robertshaw, also in Oxford.
I'm Nathan, also in Oxford.
This is getting crazy today. We are a massive
Alice,
party
also in
Oxford. I'm sorry, Alice, I've forgotten.
There's so many people
There's
here.
just so many people, and I was waiting for the camera changes. And also, we are super excited to have Pia Jones stepping in for our Charlie Wickham on sound today. Hello, Pia. Do we get some confetti? Whatever. No, we decided to shake it up a bit and try and squeeze as many people into this tiny little box as we can. Coming up, we are reporting back from ICANN in Prague. We've been talking about the NIS2 directive and the extraterritorial reach. Next, Beyond.com, I've got to say this right, unpacking the future of digital identity with 3 fun facts about blockchain domains. And finally, we should talk a bit about that outage yesterday. Before we talk about ICANN, please do hit subscribe to this channel and hit follow on our Apple Podcasts and rate and review us, particularly if you like us. I don't know which one to talk to first. I think, Mark, you've been in ICANN, well, so has Nathan, in Prague. Before we talk about what you were talking about, I just wanted to recap on ICANN. And funnily enough, I asked one of the AIs to give me some fun facts about ICANN, and they described them as the unsung architects of the internet. I cannot believe this.
Wow. They do say that generative AI sometimes hallucinates. And maybe that's...
Yes.
I mean, I think unsung is right, because hardly anybody has heard of
Nobody
ICANN.
knows who they are.
Yeah.
It's like doing a game of guessing what it stands for, and I always get it wrong.
Okay, Alice.
The Internet Corporation
That was very undervoiced.
Assigned names and numbers.
Very good.
Yeah, because
Yes.
it's not just about domain names and names of things, Mark. It's also about...
Numbers.
There you go.
Which is often the underplayed element of ICANN, I think, in my opinion. I mean, there are some, I think, quite small sessions on numbers, but actually it is, I think, often, very focused on the domain side.
I think that there's a reason for that. It's a bit like the country codes all do their own thing policy-wise. So do the regional internet registries who coordinate the distribution of IP addresses. So they're actually very strident in pushing ICANN away from themselves in terms of having any policy coordination role. Whereas ICANN has a very strong policy coordination role on the generic top-level domain policies.
The .coms, the .uk's, etc. And there is a thing here. I mean, actually going through chat's facts about ICANN, they call them the phone book and the post office of the internet. So you can look up a domain name, and they are also responsible for delivering parcels and packages. I don't agree.
I don't agree with the second one.
No.
No.
And so I think they're conflating sort of architecture and the people who actually did the architecture of the internet, who were
Vince,
Steve Crocker.
Steve Crocker,
Yeah.
Tim
with
Berners-Lee did the web. Yeah.
with those who are making decisions about who gets the blocks of names and numbers and who
I
gets the name.
suppose that's also the post office bit is probably an effort to explain the IANA function in kind of more general terms. But I think that's more the kind of phone book thing, because you're looking
I've
up...
got a question about if
Okay.
you could. So to me, the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers doesn't mean anything to me. It sounds like it's about maths. If you could rename ICANN to describe what it actually does, what would you call it?
I can't.
Okay. Serious answers.
It's a place where they talk as multi-stakeholder. It used to be under US government oversight, but in a 2016 landmark agreement completed a transition to a sort of global multi-stakeholder governance model. Sounds very snappy. How snappy is it, Emily?
It's not very snappy. Alice, I would like to turn your question back to you. What would you call like if you had a magic wand and you could rename
government of the internet?
And they'd all that would lead to possibly weeks of you being told off for saying their government.
How about off God?
Off God.
The Office for Governments of Domain Names?
Ooh,
I think that's quite nice. Off God, I love that.
Yeah.
Mark, Nathan, we are denying you the actual, whenever we talk about ICANN, we must talk.
I'm still reacting to the off God.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
I think they would love that as well,
I think they would
knowing
love
how
it.
ICANN operates.
I think they think it's quite right.
Office for the Governance of Domain Names. Wonderful.
Nathan, we're going to talk a bit about blockchain domains because blockchain domains was a topic that you were sort of talking about at ICANN. But before we do that, Mark, you had quite a geeky time at ICANN talking about the NIS2 directive. Emily, perhaps you could summarise the NIS2 directive because it's a very legal thing. And Mark, you were particularly talking about sort of extraterritorial reach.
Indeed.
Yeah, so the NIS2 directive is a piece of European legislation, a law, that because it's a directive, it means that every country in the European Union has to create their own law to make it, to transpose it, as they say, into their national legislation. So that's the directive bit. The NIS bit is network information security. The 2 bit means this is the second time the European Union has been around the block, and most of it's around kind of classic cybersecurity resilience. But there's one article, Article 28, that sort of just got plonked in there about domain names, and it's really an effort to compel the domain name industry to publish and make available registration data, which has suffered under the General Data Protection Act. So
Alice, how does that sound to you?
So you're saying that GDPR meant that, we can't share people's private information, and actually it is important to know who's registered a domain because...
Well, because there's only because it's a bit like who does this phone number relate to, who lives at this address. That most of the time it's irrelevant, but a lot of the time it's like, well, a crime has been committed using this domain name, and we need to investigate that crime, or we need to get in touch with the person, either maybe for cybersecurity reasons, or maybe because we want to buy the domain name, maybe not such a great reason. But there's lots of reasons why you need that information. Yeah, maybe you don't need it published over the whole world all the time because there's so many innocent domains. But, it's only a very few people and organisations who know or should know who the registrant of a domain name is.
So, Mark, you flew to Prague. I can't remember what Prague is good for. I just remember something about
beers was definitely the feature.
Oh, right, okay.
£2 for a pint there. I mean, it was amazing beer.
Oh, right.
Wicked.
I'm sure.
And gorgeous place.
Mate, very colourful. That was the thing that struck me, was all the buildings were brightly coloured and beautiful. So that was, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Nice. And you went there and you talked to various multi-stakeholder groups.
We did, yes. So we were speaking mostly, in my case, it was to the CSG, which is the commercial group of stakeholders in ICANN. But we're talking very much about the NIS2 directive, particularly Article 28, which Emily's alluded to. And the reality that whilst many of the stakeholders at ICANN would not like to accept this, that very much like GDPR, the NIS2 directive will apply to many parties outside of the EU as well as those inside
What?
the EU.
Why? How?
Because of this extraterritorial effect, which actually it's picked up in other articles within the NIS2.
Is there any?
26
So sorry, they're making
Yeah.
rules in one region of
Yeah.
the world, and they're saying our laws and our rules
Yeah.
here in this region of the world. Also, you must obey in that region of the world.
Because of I think probably very clever framing. This very much like GDPR. People thought when GDPR came out, oh, it's just a little European thing, and then very quickly realised no, the whole world has to do it.
So
this is very similar.
So how
actually.
is the Brexit people going to think about that? Just putting that hat on for a while and thinking, well, we don't want European law over here. But now they're just making European law whether in Europe or not.
Yes, and I think the clever way around the problem is to basically say that if your customer resides in the EU, that's particularly the focus, then you have to comply with the regulations. But of course, but there's an interesting other side to that. So the customer things are very straightforward ones to say, well, if you're in the EU, then and you're serving customers there outside. So you're in America and you've got customers, you're a registry or a registrar, particularly in the ICANN environment for domains. Yeah. Then you have to comply, and that actually accounts for, in the case of registries, over 50% of registrations in the EU are served by people outside. Yeah. And about 48% of registrars outside the EU are serving customers inside the EU.
Right. So that knocking on the table, that wasn't somebody in a coffin sort of under the table saying, I'm at the end of our laws, international laws as we know it. Hello, are you there? Can you talk to us? Are you okay? But so this is sort of tech and tech laws just pervasive, isn't it? It's sort of spreading across the world. Yeah. How will an American company know, say they're just pushing out their services all over the world, how do they know when people are in the EU? And presumably it's like when they're on holiday in the EU and they're travelling, so you need to know when they're in the EU.
No, it's about where they're resident.
Oh, is it?
Yes. So it's at the point of registration when they put in their details and they all do the know your customer, or not. Yeah.
So this is know your customer is when they
verify in some way that the person is who they say they are.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And that's part of what the NIS2 directive is bringing in.
You following,
Alice? How are you doing?
You do online transactions all the time and sort of sign up to things in seconds. How do you feel about signing up to something and going through passport control and immigration?
I bought a domain name the other day, which was theinternetseriously.com.
Yeah, right.
Very topical, and I could tick a box that said make your registration information public, and that's my personal address and name that just anyone could access. Yeah. So it's like in GDPR world, it's like no, you never. It's quite.
You're allowed to give permission.
You're allowed to give permission.
You're allowed to give. Yeah. But I presume, were you buying as I was about to say as a human or as a business? Were you buying as a citizen, a consumer, or as a business, the internet seriously?
Well, I guess I was buying as a business.
Is there a difference, Emily, between a business and a citizen or a consumer?
So this is something that has somewhat kind of got blurred in the application of GDPR to who is that. The privacy laws apply to individuals,
right,
and not to corporates. So corporates don't have a right of privacy, and in fact, there's quite a lot of other regulation that requires corporates to be quite public about who they are and where they are, to protect consumers.
And what about individuals within a corporation?
That's where the individuals are always protected.
So it blurs again.
So it's sort of like,
I have to say the application in reality is very conservative. And so what's happened in practice is that following GDPR, every sort of registry that would emit data about ownership have opted to pretty much redact everything, without any sense of whether it's an organisation or not, just to make sure they're on the safer side.
But Alice's point is really valid. You were there as a young person, and you suddenly feel quite vulnerable, I imagine, thinking about, do I want my personal name and address and details, email, phone number and all the
Mm.
stuff that is collected, do I want that published on the internet? And I guess your answer would be
No,
thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mark, how did it go?
I think it went down pretty well. I mean, I think the other way round is very interesting as well. One of the points that I made was that people who are based in the EU as well, who have customers outside the EU, while that's not technically an in-scope thing, the chances are that they will also be affected by the fact that people will make changes to their systems who are based, as in, some operating you will do one bit of coding which would affect people who are customers outside as well. And I think from one of the points that I tried to make was that with our sort of abuse fighting hats on for a minute, it's actually quite a good directive because it's causing things to be made more available, data to be made more visible on who owns things, and that will have more of a global impact than perhaps even they foresaw because of the way they framed their legislation. So yeah, I think it was well received by that group.
So we're seeking to improve the quality of the data that's out there and the protections that are out there, but make brighter lines between those consumers and individuals, even those within organisations.
Correct.
Yeah, so before we move on to another techie, geeky subject, I really love this, it's time for our guilty pleasure online. Mark Robertshaw. Oh, that was a really nice syncopated stop of the keyboard. Then, Mark, you're on today. What is your guilty pleasure online?
Okay, so for me, what it is at the moment is using Meta AI to generate pictures.
Oh.
So basically, I'm completely obsessed with this. I will go onto Meta AI and I will say, draw me a picture of a pink horse with a Mercedes driving past and a hot air balloon in the background. And it just
good?
does it.
Is it
it's
fast?
amazing.
Do you like it
It
because
is
it's a bit rubbish, or do you like it because it's actually a really good
I think it's amazing, and it is obviously it's comedy, and then you can do a picture of crazy things, and you can here we go.
There's stuff happening now.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Is that Meta AI?
Playing poker.
We're playing poker. There we are.
You can, and it is fast. It makes you 4 alternative images each time. So and it's in a matter of seconds. It's much quicker than the ChatGPT equivalent.
I noticed that because I was using it to do my circular firing
You did
squad.
an incredible one of you wanted animals all in a circular firing squad, and there's a picture of dogs and rabbits and things all with guns.
Yeah,
in a,
and actually I used several at the same time. So I used Chat, I used Gemini. I didn't know that Meta did one.
Yeah.
And Chat just couldn't do
Cope.
it just couldn't cope. It
It's
just
so popular, I think, as a service, but Meta AI
I
is.
think that one ended up being a Gemini.
Alice, there's a bit of a battle, isn't there, with art online, auto-generated art, because we do love it, because actually the sort of stuff you can buy is in the commercial world, and I don't want to name and shame any brands, but the art is pretty awful with models sort of with laptops.
Well,
and things.
I guess it depends, because it's like Igor just AI generated that picture of us playing poker in like a couple of seconds, and it's like, I guess we would never sort of be like, right, we want a picture of us playing poker that will come up organically in a conversation on a podcast and be used for 3 seconds. We're not going to like pay an artist to go and do that. Spend weeks, days.
Well, they would
could
have
take
to
ages.
Have special magic powers.
To know what we were going to talk about.
So
So there is, I guess, I don't know, it's a very complicated issue, because obviously there's a lot of artists who are really worried, rightfully devastated, that lots of things like, I just need to make a logo, I just need to make a little animation. That's a big piece of work for an artist that is now
gone.
And so it's complicated.
And also, I think there's a rights issue as well, and Elton John has been weighing in on this.
And Dua Lipa.
Your
Just
favourite,
English
your equal favourite, along with Taylor Swift.
I don't agree. I don't like that. One of them's better than the other.
Creepy.
It's just appreciation of their music.
Just
that's
old.
But they are objecting to a lack of a fair deal for artists whose work has been scraped to train the AI.
That's
so
the real
there's a
kicker.
disconnect between the people who are creating the base training material and the people who are making money out of it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to our next topic, and I'm going to actually move the mic so it's easier for Nathan to be heard.
You're on.
So you own them, you don't rent them. They can simplify crypto transactions. They enable censorship-resistant websites. They are called blockchain. What are they called? Domains or identifiers?
Well, it depends who you're asking. I think in the ICANN world, if I bring ICANN back into it, people would probably prefer that they're referred to as identifiers rather than domains. And partly that's probably to do with trying to avoid confusion with what we would associate to be traditional domain names like your .coms, your .infos, your .nets and things like that. So.
Yeah, which is a massive established market.
Correct.
But I was thinking about blockchain domains because they're there, they're lurking. They're not yet automatically routing to things via browsers or routing to websites via browsers, but they are routing to crypto wallets. And worse, you can't get to a crypto wallet from a domain name. So it's actually occupying a piece of the market which domain names won't do.
Yeah, I mean, so that is exactly right. The predominant use case for blockchain identifiers or domains is to help people transact with cryptocurrency. And it goes back to the reason why we have traditional domain names like .com is so that people don't have to remember IP addresses.
Yeah.
Blockchain domains are there so you don't have to remember long crypto hashes.
And let's be clear, they're not like a 4-part IP address 192.168.2. No, they are OXC34506A7 5D87700. Is that 00 or is that 00RJ4R? You know, that's my crypto wallet address. I'll just read it out to you. Whereas in fact, you can have alice.crypto. And because you've reserved that identifier.
It is pretty cool. Yeah, I think the thing, when I started learning about blockchain domains, I was like, what is this? I don't understand. And I guess there's bits of it that I'm starting to see as like, oh, maybe this could be something really helpful, you know, with increasing kind of spam and fraud and scams and needing to know who's a human, who's an AI. The idea of like maybe blockchain could play a role in that. And also the thing that you introduced this topic with of you can own them rather than rent them really kind of clicked something in my head, because there's a big discussion at the moment about like we subscribe to everything now. It's like you've got your 4 streaming platforms, your account for this, your printer needs a subscription, and you only ever rent a domain name. So I'm renting the internetseriously.com for 2 or 3 years, and then in 2 or 3 years somebody else could come along and take it away.
If you forget to renew it.
If I forget to renew it, or you know, in 50 years' time, you know, who knows what will happen. And then a blockchain domain you can own, which kind of seems like an amazing concept.
And another aspect, Emily, I'm going to just read this. They enable censorship-resistant websites because blockchain domains are decentralized and stored on a blockchain, often linked to decentralized hosting like the interplanetary file system. They are much more difficult to censor or take down by a central authority, government, or even the domain provider itself. This offers a new level of freedom and resilience for online content.
And this is sort of a back to the internet's first promise, really, which was that of a distributed authority. And in a way, domain names always broke that rule because they're very hierarchical and they end up with one single point of control in the root. Whereas the whole blockchain identifier concept, in a way, I can imagine that people in the ICANN environment who are predominantly from the domain name industry or have made their careers relating to it, very nervous, because it really, if they do take hold, and I'd be interested if you know about the uptake of blockchain domains. How's it going? Is it
so yeah, I mean,
rapidly growing, or is it sort
it's
of
probably, so there was a spike probably around 2020 2021 where it kind of took off and there was a huge upsurge in registrations. That has kind of slowly settled, but they are still you know, there is still a large uptake of these domains. And just to touch on various points, the problem that people will have is that regards to the ownership is that only those who have control of the wallets of those identifiers can control what happens. So that's where things can't be taken away. You are effectively, in ICANN you're renting. You can own for life a blockchain domain, but there is also some providers who do rent them. So there is that similar aspect where you can just have it for 1 or 2 years. If you forget to renew, someone else can pick it up. But that is also, a possibility as well.
So what were you talking about at ICANN?
So I was talking at ICANN specifically about some of the research that we're doing. It's part of what we do. We like to, perform research, and blockchain is one area that I'm quite passionate about. I quite enjoy, looking at new technology and different ways of doing things. So I was sharing our experience of the research that we've done around the different providers or the different companies who sell blockchain domains. How much they cost, where they're located, how easy it is to set them up, what browsers support them, all various different aspects.
What browsers do support them? Do we know?
So currently there are 2 browsers who offer native support, which is Brave and Opera. There may be some others as well, but those are the 2 most prominent. Otherwise, in order to get them to root, you have to use plugins, additional downloads and things like that.
But it's happening.
Yeah, it is happening.
Do you feel like it's progressing since, we were starting to look at blockchain domains a couple of years ago, and probably around that kind of crest of the wave. Do you feel like that the support and the integration with the domain name system is increasing? And my other question to you is, I guess the big topic of conversation at this ICANN was the opening of the publication of the new GTLD handbook, which is a new round of domain endings. So you can, to me, it sounds like you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and spend years going through a process with ICANN for a regular domain, or you can just rock up and do your own top-level domain in the crypto system. Was there much anxiety about this disparity?
There is some anxiety, and that we addressed in a research project that we did a couple of months ago, where we looked at collisions between blockchain and the traditional DNS space. And interestingly enough, at the top level, I'm talking about the .com, .nets, that level of domains, there isn't much collision currently. Now, with the next round of GTLDs from ICANN, chances are people are going to be very interested in purchasing digital wallet-related, cryptocurrency-related top-level domains, and a lot of those already exist in the blockchain space.
Yes.
So that is an area where,
like, for example, .oxford, it could well be a new GTLD second round name because it doesn't exist, and you've got real success in places like .hamburg, where they're selling millions of them.
Yes.
If Oxford get its act together and do something like getting this top level domain for their city use and students, you may find a .oxford. I know there are already hundreds of .oxford, .oxford uni, .oxford health derivatives in the blockchain space. How are they going to claim first come first serve rights to that space?
Well, and that's, I think, a question that nobody has properly got the answer to, and I don't know what will happen in that scenario.
Right. There's one other thing.
One thing I picked up in the room when Nathan was presenting at ICANN was a sense that there might be also a sort of competition going on a bit there. Actually, that people might deliberately register DNS equivalents of the blockchain to almost sort of try and knock it on the head and try not to, and a very strong
like, if I go and buy facebook.com, the blockchain domain, and then be like, oh well, it's mine, you can buy it back for £1 million.
Exactly, or just that we're bigger than you currently, and if we sort of capture the market enough, then we can sort of forget about that alternative route.
Alice, there's a real angle that I want to talk about with you, which is we from the traditional internet community just completely airbrush and elephant in the room gaming. And in the gaming sphere, I've been told by members of my other members of my family that there's a lot of scams and fraud happening in that space. Crypto wallets are a big part of reward and benefit in the gaming world, and blockchain identifiers are recognised in the gaming world, and therefore passing off as a brand, as somebody else, is prevalent in that space. And I'm interested in your thoughts as somebody who enjoys games to play.
Yeah,
Whether
I mean,
there's
I'm a
any
big
discussions about
gamer.
that.
I haven't really come across this, but one sort of other area I know about is the art world and the digital art world. And so in that research project that we've been doing, I would say the best kind of blockchain identifier service was, I think it's art.ai or art.
There's a .art.
.art. That's it.
Yeah.
.art is a blockchain and traditional,
Yes.
and it's the
It's a collision.
ICANN. They made it. They were like, we are launching a blockchain and traditional domain together.
Yeah.
And it seems like really well established, like it's going well, and actually could provide a service for digital artists where it's like, this allows you, like I was kind of
Provenance,
talking
yes,
about, of
yeah.
like,
Fingerprinting.
I am a real human.
Yeah.
I'm creating my identity in two different ways, and I don't know. I think maybe that could be a positive use of blockchain domains
Well,
for the
yeah.
digital.
Well,
art
we're going to
community.
keep tracking this fascinating topic.
We
It's,
will,
and
yeah.
and we notice, we feel the paranoia in the internet industry is a new, and you know, we've been talking about the telcos and what the platforms have done to the traditional telcos
Yes.
who would rent text messages and stuff, and the ability to do that, and now that's all gone, you know.
Well, the
Sorry, let's get your...
yeah, the cheeky startups, if they're successful, become incumbents, and everybody goes through the same cycle of behaviour in that kind of
Which
thing.
is change management, anger, denial.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we're
A
nearly
grief
at
cycle.
time, and before we just pop into our last topic, it's time for our Tech Room 101. Hey, Mark Robertshaw again. What would you like to put in the bin of tech innovation forever?
So I know this has been flagged before, but it's going to be those cookie notices again, and it's going to be the ones that you just cannot cancel. There are so many of them, you know, now that you
We
go to
hate
the
them.
site and it just doesn't work. It's broken tech, and so you end up with this permanent covering of the site, and you just, and particularly on a mobile device, you just can't operate the site.
Yeah.
It's either covering the top when you can't click the navigation, or it's the bottom and you can't progress. So
No.
it's got to be that.
That's a very particular, you know, cookie notice is now a very, very detailed, very sort of specific kind of topic that we've got to keep talking about, the problem of cookie notices,
Yeah.
obviously. Now that, as differentiated to cookie notices that have so many vendor things that you can never get through. You know, here's another 400, one at a time,
Yes.
one at a time.
Yes.
And that one which you're talking about, cannot cancel, is just bad engineering.
It's bad engineering.
Bad
Yes,
engineering.
So it's
absolutely.
badly
Yeah.
so as distinct from, which we haven't had in the room 101, which is vendor cookie notice
Yes.
items in a cookie notice.
It's
And
bad
let's be clear,
engineering,
we've
yeah.
had cookie notices probably 5 times.
I might have done the millions of
The
vendor
million
ones.
ones,
Well, I
okay.
certainly felt it in here.
Well, we need an internet seriously archivists. Please work through our previous Tech Room 101s and see if you
Yes.
can find it. But Mark, that's very specific. It's poorly engineered cookie notices that.
And I think, you know, the reflection on that might be that, you know, lots of people do create websites who are not very technical, and they get away with it because the core technology behind websites is very tolerant to HTML is very tolerant. You can, you know,
Yeah.
do what you like, but cookie notices require a certainly higher level of skill to do well. And I think that's
on
a
the
challenge.
list, I've got one last quick topic and a comment of the week. So, but the comment, the quick topic we've got to talk about. Alice, did you try and use the internet yesterday?
I did.
Oh, good. Did it work?
It did,
Ah.
but I did see a lot of memes on TikTok about ChatGPT being down.
Oh,
Right.
what was your favourite meme?
There's somebody who does this running sketch where he kind of keeps ChatGPT like a sort of, you know, servant in his house, and will just go up to him and be like, write me an essay right now. And ChatGPT's like, oh, okay. And he kind of comes in and is like, I need you to reformat my CV, and ChatGPT's just asleep. And he's like poking him and has to go and use a different AI
So-
model.
Okay. This disappeared from the news today because there's been global war sort of launched. And so just to cheer ourselves up a bit and argue about our mushrooms and our fellow hobbit people, where are we with what is it? I asked Google Gemini to tell me what the problem was yesterday because I couldn't find out on the news, and it talked about Google Cloud Identity and Access Management failure, which Mark, you mentioned, reminds us of a big Meta outage. That, Meta just stopped and they couldn't even get into the rooms of the server rooms of Meta because they needed the internet to get into the rooms with a thing called BGP.
I think the result from Gemini probably is a reflection on Google's specific failure yesterday and how their services sort of stopped. But given the wide scale nature of the problem yesterday, in the number of services affected, the likelihood is that the actual problem was much more downstream and probably at the routing level. I mean, the alternative is probably more concerning if there is an interdependency on Google Identity for services like Cloudflare, AWS, which would provide some tight coupling, which we might want to be concerned about. But I suspect it was more downstream.
Well, the original internet project was a military project, a military exercise to survive global war. Now, obviously, nobody's facing global war today, but have we got an internet, Emily, that would be able to survive that?
Well, this is an issue that the policy community are really quite focused on, and certainly in the Journal of Cyber Policy, which I'm currently editor of, there has been quite a lot of work on this. Is that the success of some of the major platforms, and particularly those that are providing those cloud services, is both a benefit to small and medium-sized enterprises and others to be able to have resilience and uptime and better cybersecurity, but it is also a loss of resilience in that the dream of the internet, which was a totally distributed system, something that the blockchain world has kind of, that anxiety about consolidation and loss of resilience and the brittleness, like one provider goes down, boom, a ton of services suddenly disappear. ChatGPT is unresponsive to its masters, and
no
this
pickies
is
that week.
So it also makes us reflect on the incredible resilience of the internet over the last 50 years because of its distributed architecture, but that the success of cloud, the utility of cloud also introduces its own vulnerabilities.
We will keep reading and watching this space. Alice, do we have a comment of the week?
We do have a comment of the week, which is a response to my Tech Room 101 from last week, which, to recap, was the frustration I feel when you're searching for an item. Let's say you're getting a Tesco delivery and you search for apples, and you see the word apples in the drop-down list, and as you're going to press it, the list refreshes, and you've ended up clicking on like sausage rolls, and you're like, oh no, and then you have to wait for it to load.
Or worse.
The comment says, makes my blood boil. Also, when you're halfway through a list, click an item, go back to the list, and it scrolls back to the top. So
Oh my goodness.
people out there who really
This
relate
is again
to my
Scroll
struggle.
position.
This scroll position.
Yeah.
Scroll position.
Quick word on scroll position, because isn't this again another engineering failure?
Yeah, it is. Not
It
enough
is,
people are
yeah.
doing it properly,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's
Does
Does it make you angry?
Yeah, it does.
Does
Do we
it
know
make
who
you
that was
angry?
from, that comment of
That
the week?
was from someone called J.ab.1989 on TikTok.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much. And
much.
maybe J.ab. You might consider a crypto wallet identifier just to get that name even more snappy. But thank you for your generous comment. We have been talking about ICANN in Prague and reporting back about the NIS2 directive discussions and its extraterritorial reach. Beyond.com, we've been unpacking the future of digital identity with fun facts about blockchain domains. Yes, they were fun facts. And we talked a bit about the, internet stalling yesterday. Thank you very much.